What's up, y'all? Good morning. I think it's Sunday. Don't know quite what the date is. I think all of our days just kind of run together nowadays. So I put on Facebook the other day, I post looking for recommendations, what people would like me to talk about. What would they be interested in hearing? So, Jerry Ann Corson shouted out like almost immediately. She's like, talk about farming and young farmers and how important they are. And I thought to myself, I'm like, that's a pretty good topic, especially right now with what's going on in the world. And people being a little bit concerned about the food supply and having labor and workers and stuff. So I figured, what better topic to talk about than agriculture? As many of y'all know, chances are you're following this because you either follow my Facebook or my Instagram or some form of social media, and you already know that I'm involved in agriculture, pretty heavily involved in agriculture. I have been. I was raised in agriculture, and I have a pretty diverse background in agriculture. I've raised everything from chickens to geese to hogs to cattle, sheep. Uh, my specialty, I mean, all farmers have a specialty crop, and even if it's livestock, it's still considered a crop. So mine is actually aquaculture, fish, which fish is farming. Like, I'm the only guy in my crowd that is a fish farmer. So that makes it a lot of fun when we're traveling as a group because, you have all these cowboys and ranchers and row crop growers, and then you have good old Rob, the fish farmer. But ain't nobody complaining when they eating their catfish. But yeah, so I'm 35 years old right now in 2020, and like I said, I've been farming since I was extremely young. I grew up. Started it with poultry and that. I grew up on a lake, so I was always involved in aquaculture. Like, I was always out playing with fish, catching fish, turtles, stuff like that. And as much as I hate nope noodles, aka snakes, when I was little, fun fact, I used to catch snakes all the time. So it's kind of ironic as an adult, I despise them. So but I grew up around that kind of wildlife and those kind of ecosystems. So I guess it only makes sense that I'm a fish farmer now because I grew up being surrounded by water. But I grew up working cows and learning all about poultry and, like I said, swine, showmanship, all of that kinds of stuff. And so as I ventured into adulthood, with such a strong background in agriculture, I felt it was only right to continue in agriculture. One, I absolutely love it. It's not just a hobby, but it's a lifestyle for me. Two, I kind of feel it's my duty. I mean, when you're blessed with the ability to be able to provide for other people, not just yourself, but other people, and you're able to share that passion, I think it's important for you to be able to go out there and live that, live your passion, live your dream, your dash. And that's exactly what I did. I could tell you there was many times, I guess I can admit it now, there was many times that I'd be in detention or whatever, and I'd be sitting there plotting out my farm for when I was older. And I hate to think that I'm older now, but since I've been an adult, farming has been a very intricate part of my life. And how does it affect others? Well, I mean, we could just go broad and say, well, I'm helping feed the world, which in a way I do, obviously. We specialize in fingerlings, so we raise and move small fish. And then, of course, they go to people that have aquaponic systems. They go to folks that have grow out farms, which actually grow out for consumption and stuff like that. So we are part of the chain of feeding America. Um, I'm sure some of the producers that we sell to do export, but I don't follow the chain that far down. So, I just worry about what's going on in my own backyard kind of thing. But I mean, we could go on the broad level of saying, hey, if you eat, you're involved in agriculture, which is so true, and a lot of people don't stop and think about it. the general public would be absolutely amazed on how many of themselves think food comes from a store. You can walk into an elementary school and ask a child where milk comes from, especially in an urban city, and they're going to tell you Walmart or Publix or the corner grocery store. Sorry if I'm slurring a little bit this morning because I'm still just waking up. But yeah, there are so many kids out there that don't realize where their food comes from. And as this is set in with this pandemic, it was amazing to sit here and watch the TV and actually hear people on national TV be like, we don't know what's going to happen. You know, if Walmart stops selling food, that's where food comes from. Yeah, no. Farmers are still going to be raising food. Now, large production farmers might not be raising it nearly as much, but Walmart, I guarantee you, Walmart's not outside growing baked beans. That's coming from somewhere else, and that's coming from a bean farmer. So, and of course, there's several steps in between the farm and the end product on the shelf. But at the end of the day, nothing says that you cannot grow your own produce at your house. You know, it has been an ongoing thing, especially the last decade or so. There's been a whole push for urban agriculture and homesteading, and folks trying to just grow gardens out in their front yard or the backyard, out on their patios and that. And that was a good thing. And I'm kind of glad that movement was going, simply because of where we're at right now. Now, granted, a couple weeks leading up to this COVID, as they were talking about it, while it was still overseas, mainly affecting parts of Asia and Europe, you walked into Home Depot and there were just hordes of people in there. They were all becoming gardeners. And you kind of chuckle a little bit because it's not as easy as people think. But it is relatively easy to grow your own food. Now, is it going to come out like the baked beans that you get off the shelf, or is it going to come out as the green beans or the strawberries or whatever? It's going to be a little different. There's grading processes and everything else. So when you're growing at home, it may not look as pretty as what you're getting from Publix. But at the end of the day, it's all still edible. And that's the important part. So going back to where I come into play and how I got involved in agriculture, like I said, I kind of grew up doing it, and now I do it as an adult. The last 3 years, I know many of y'all know that I've encountered some really crazy stuff health-wise, and this last year, especially in 2019, I spent 109 days in the hospital, months of rehab, and I'm still kind of kicking at it, and it slowed me down tremendously. But in the same token, I had already made moves prior to getting sick in 2019 to downsize. I did not like the idea of large-scale corporate farming. As much as I still was in power of my production, I had a very large operation, and that was very tedious to run. And I relied heavily on my family, close friends, stuff like that, especially with larger orders. And the overhead was there, and overhead will always be there. So regardless if we're shut down for some reason, whether it be a hurricane, weather, I don't know, COVID-19, you're still going to have whatever overhead that you have. You have to pay electric. You have to pay your taxes. You have to still pay payroll if you have a payroll. There's so much other things, And when you're dealing with live animals and the keeping of live animals, they still require food, depending on what animal it is, medications. When you get into my side of agriculture, aquaculture, they require air and water pumps and all that, which is based on electricity, which costs money. So when you do get into in a time like what we are right now, and you have heavy overhead, it's going to be hard to make ends meet, and you run the risk of losing your farm, which I think a lot of producers, not just agriculture or anything like that, or aquaculture, but all aspects of agriculture, I think they're all kind of looking at that, especially the large production farmers. You're seeing on the news where, dairy farmers are having to dump milk, and there's a whole story behind that. But you're also seeing where tomato farmers in Florida are having to dump tomatoes and squash and zucchini and all that out in their fields because they have nowhere to move it. And the first instinct of the general public is like, oh, why aren't they just giving it away? Well, there's a whole lot that goes into that. One, a lot of those producers, especially in South Florida, their end market is cruise lines, hospitality, hotels, restaurants. So in this situation where all that is shut down almost completely, with the exception of a handful of restaurants doing takeout, all of a sudden their demand is gone and they have all this supply. Now, some farms thought very quick and creatively and started to sell directly to the consumer, which was brilliant on themselves. They are trying to save themselves quick, and save that produce and save people. We're all in this together. We farm not for the money. Trust me, it is not for the money. We farm because we have that desire, that connection to the land, that passion, that ability to go out there and try to make a difference in people's lives. So, with that being said, we've seen so many farmers out there selling directly to the consumer, and a lot of times way, 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 way cheaper than you could ever have in a store. Why? Because all those middlemen that go from Farmer John's farm all the way to the end product on the shelf of Walmart or Publix are now removed. Now, granted, everybody flocks to those shelves on Publix and Walmart because they know they can get the food there. But as this is playing out, and especially with the help of social media, people are realizing they can go to Farmer John for their squash, their tomatoes, their pineapples, whatever, watermelons, whatever's in season, and now they're all going here. So it's helping everybody on all the forefronts, because now we're supposed to be staying put as much as we can. So now they can go and stock up on enough food, even if they have to freeze it. They're saving a tremendous amount of money because they're dealing directly with the farmer, and the farmer's able to unload it. Now, there's a couple of things that go into play with this. On smaller operations, some are U-Picks, which the farmer has insurance for people to come on the property and everything like that. Or if it's a smaller U-Pick type operation, the farmer, their family, their friends, etc. can go out there and pick and harvest and be able to still sell roadside stand type or CSA type. But when you're dealing with larger farms that are thousands of acres, they've got thousands of acres of tomatoes out there, it's a little bit different, because there's a couple of things that come into play with that. It takes a ton of labor to pick. And not only, immigration has always been a big thing for us. And a lot of immigration for the United States, believe it or not, our legal immigration is for agriculture. So this has all thrown kind of a wrench in our regular immigration process. But we have workers that are still sick and or not coming to work. And when you're talking thousands of acres, that's a whole lot of food. And if the insurance doesn't have the farmers don't have the proper insurance to have hordes of people come on their property to pick, that opens up a whole new level of liability for that farmer. We're held to a lot of high standards. We have a lot of regulations in whatever industry within the agriculture industry that we're in. We have a lot of regulations, and we have a lot of best management practices we have to follow. So, Farmer John with 2,000 acres of tomatoes may not be able to just open up his farm and say, come and get it, or hey, $10 a person, all you can carry kind of thing, just because it's however his operation is set up, especially on a legal point of view. So at the end of the day, though, this COVID-19 is changing everything for every industry. You're going to see people that own businesses realize that it's cheaper to have their employees work from home as long as their productivity stays efficient, work from home versus being in an office. They're going to see their overhead cut. We're going to see a lot of folks realize that having roadside stands, U-Pick stands on the side of their operations and that kind of stuff might be more feasible for them than selling directly to. Another thing to keep in mind too is when you're a large agriculture operation, a lot of times you're under contract to produce so much. And going back to the immigration thing and the labor thing, if you don't have the people to pick, if you don't have the people to harvest, that becomes a problem if you can't meet your contract. Because if you're not contracting to an essential business that's open, or not open, a non-essential business that's not open, if you're not contracted to them, then you might be in trouble. Because someone's still going to be waiting for their oranges. Someone's still going to be waiting for those cucumbers. Someone's still going to be waiting for their tilapia to show up. So there's so much that goes into play with all that. But at the end of the day, bottom line is food comes from people. They don't come from the store. They come from farmers. And farmers have a lot of responsibility. A lot of responsibility. And I'll throw this into perspective too. Like when a hurricane happens, we don't get to just like pack up and run. We have a lot of responsibility. Cattle ranchers have to make sure their cattle are accounted for. Their horses are accounted for. I, in the aquaculture industry, have to make sure that my fish are not rolling down a creek somewhere. During a hurricane, we have to make sure our fences are still up. Our pens are still up. Our pumps are running. Because rain isn't always a good thing, especially if it comes all at once in one spot. So, especially in my field where you have all these fish either in holding vats or in holding ponds, and you have to make sure those ponds don't overflow because there goes your entire crop. There goes all of your livestock, because fish are livestock too. So, that's a big thing too, is we don't get to run. We just keep on going. That storm passes and we have no power. We improvise and we still are farming. COVID-19 hits. People are locked in their houses. Guess what? It's no different for the farmer. We are still farming. That's one thing is people are worried about the food supply, and I understand that. It's going to get interrupted to some point. But if you know your farmer, you'll probably be okay. It may not be what you're used to eating every single day. Or you might have to eat a whole lot of something that you're not used to eating a whole lot of. But at the end of the day, you will not go hungry. So today's little tidbit was kind of about how important the farmer is. When we can get into some crazy stuff, like I can talk to you about numbers, and a lot of people, fun fact, a lot of people do not know that farmers only make up 2% of the population. And majority of the time, the average age of a farmer is more than 56 years old. So for a young buck like me, and I'm 35, and there's a whole lot more that are younger than me, we make up just a small percentage of farmers within a very small percentage of the population. And we're tasked with feeding the entire world. So we are a very, 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 very important part of the survival of a human. And I think people are starting to realize that and see that. And I applaud them for going out there and trying to make a difference themselves. I applaud them for trying to homestead. I applaud them for trying to be self-sustainable. They are out there learning how to can. They're out there learning how to plant. They're learning what to plant, when to harvest. And that kind of stuff is just invaluable. Because we might come out of COVID and you might be able to go out to your favorite steak restaurant and enjoy that piece of steak. And, hopefully from Florida or Texas or the Midwest, American beef. You wake up every morning, you enjoy that fresh glass of freshly squeezed Florida orange juice, and everything will be great. And I think everything's going to be fine anyway. But you're going to appreciate it a whole lot more. And like I said, if you know your farmer, you're never going to go hungry. So anyway, we'll come back in a couple more videos, and we'll talk more about agriculture in that. I just want to kind of let you know, like, that's how I kind of got my start growing up in agriculture. And maybe each video we'll talk a little bit more in depth of that, raising chickens and working with pigs, and of course fish farming, because that's my thing. And we'll talk about legislative stuff and all kinds of stuff. And if you have any ideas what you would like to talk about or have information on, drop it in the comment section. Hit me up on the direct messages, send it to my inbox, whatever, and let me know, and we'll definitely hit it. We'll talk about it. And that's my goal, is to be out here to be informative and to get you guys through COVID-19, but also get you guys through life. And hopefully I'll make you smile. So anyway, important. Hit the subscribe button. Make sure you tap the bell. And this way you get notifications, of course. So you want to ring-a-ding-ding that. And stay well. Stay positive. Wash your hands. And support your farmers. Support agriculture. Stay home if you don't need to go nowhere. And until next time, I will see you later. So peace.